Disclaimer: this story contains mature themes intended for adult viewers. Viewer discretion is advised. I felt the room tilt the instant his knee brushed mine, a slow burn jolt that threatened every promise I'd ever made. The glow from the fireplace painted our four shadows onto the brick, stretching and folding us together before a single word passed. Ben's laugh, my husband's laugh, hit the back of my neck like warm breath, but my gaze had already locked with Sam's across the low table. He didn't smile. His dark eyes simply held me, steady as a hand at my waist, knowing, unspoken. It should have ended there, with the cautious flutter of nerves and an empty wineglass. Yet Dani slid closer to Ben, her fingers drifting over his forearm as though she'd practiced the route. My best friend since freshman year, she mouthed something that made him tilt his head, stunned, hungry, unsure which rule to honor first. I watched the muscles in his jaw work, recognition, temptation, surrender, while Sam's palms settled on the small of my back, the contact feather-light and scorching all at once. My breath hitched. Nobody pretended not to notice. Rain pressed against the tall windows, muting the city beyond, sealing our secret inside polished marble and half-emptied Bordeaux. 4 people, 2 marriages, a decade of late-night confessions and harmless jokes that suddenly felt anything but harmless. We were balanced on a precipice made of glances, Ben's shoulders rising as Dani whispered at his ear, Sam's thumb tracing idle circles at the hem of my dress, my own pulse drumming a question I'd never dared form aloud. What if the love we guarded could stretch without breaking, and what would we become if it did? The air thickened, sweet with cedar smoke and possibilities. Dani laughed again, softer this time, wrapping the sound around all of us. Ben's hand slipped to her hip, just an inch too far for friendship, while Sam's breath warmed my temple. Words stalled on my tongue, heavy, urgent, waiting for permission that might never come. Then Ben looked up, straight at me, eyes blazing with the same fear and want I felt, and the room fell silent except for the rain. One heartbeat later, Sam's lips brushed the edge of my ear and he whispered, "Say when." Everything inside me answered now, but the word stuck, hovering, trembling, in the charged hush before surrender. A log popped inside the hearth, scattering sparks like startled fireflies, and the sound jolted all 4 of us into motionless awareness. I felt Ben's gaze still fixed on me while Dani's soft laugh floated through the hush, part challenge, part invitation. Beside me, Sam rubbed his thumb once, only once, along the inward curve of my wrist. My wineglass trembled. "We should top these up," I said, voice thin with effort. No one moved. The bottle stood within reach, but crossing that space felt like crossing something larger, something irreversible. Ben's shoulders lifted, exhaled, settled. He turned to Dani, lips parted as though to speak, yet no words emerged. Her answer arrived anyway, a slow, almost imperceptible nod that made her dark hair slip forward over one eye. She didn't push it back. The silence grew dense, layered with memories, double dates at cheap diners, beach weekends crowded with sand and sunscreen and harmless teasing. Now every shared story replayed itself under new lighting, revealing pulses I'd refused to see. Guilt pricked, but underneath it, a dangerous relief, the recognition that none of us were alone in our wanting. Sam leaned just enough for his shoulder to graze mine. "Tell me what you're thinking," he murmured, breath stirring the fine hairs near my temple. I opened my mouth, nothing. All I felt was the heat of Ben's attention sliding down my cheek, pooling where my collarbone met silk. My heartbeat sounded loud, traitorous. Across the table, Dani traced idle patterns on Ben's sleeve, fingertip to elbow, as though mapping an escape route for the thoughts neither dared voice. Ben's eyelids lowered. His free hand flexed once on his knee, then stilled, disciplined. I admired him for it, even as I hoped he might fail. Rain shifted to a steadier drum. The windows fogged, turning the city into watercolor. Sam's hand left my wrist, hovered, then settled atop the piano black lacquer of the table, palm up, an unspoken offer. My fingers drifted closer, testing the charged air between skin and skin. Millimeters felt like miles. Danny caught my eye, mischief and devotion tangled in her smile. "We can still stop," she whispered. But the tremor in her voice betrayed her, and in the shared hush that followed, stopping felt like the least believable lie we'd ever told. And nobody wanted to tonight. Not now, not ever again. A fresh roll of thunder pressed against the windows, and Ben finally rose, shoulders tight as violin strings. He busied himself at the sideboard, turning the wine bottle in slow revolutions, stalling while the rest of us watched his back. The dim light skimmed the silver band on his finger. He let it catch the glow, as though reminding himself why he should pour, not touch. Across the room, Danny held her breath so long I felt it in my own lungs. When Ben returned, he handed her a glass first. Their fingers met, lingered. The pour was uneven, almost careless, and a dark droplet slid down the stem onto her knuckle. She lifted it to her lips, but I saw the tremor before she masked it with a smile. That smile had history: late-night study sessions, whispered pep talks before job interviews, comfort after heartbreaks. Now it quivered under a weight we had never confessed. Beside me, Sam rested his hand on the piano bench, knuckles blanching. A storm of words crowded behind his teeth, but he swallowed them and gave me a look I almost mistook for apology. Last summer he had told Ben in private that he sometimes dreamed of a life with different edges. I had overheard only fragments, yet they returned now like an unfinished chord, begging for resolution. Danny traced the rim of her glass. "Remember Spain?" she asked, voice too bright. "The night in Barcelona when the four of us got lost in alleyways thick with jasmine. We laughed then, drunk on moonlight and cheap sangria, sure we would never change." I nodded, and my throat tightened around the memory of her hand slipping into mine just to feel safe. Safe was a smaller word tonight. Ben set his glass down untasted. "We keep circling the same note," he said, quiet but shaking. "What happens when we finally strike it?" No one answered. The clock on the mantel ticked once, twice. Sam's knee brushed mine and stayed. Heat surged, fierce and startling, yet he did not push farther. He only breathed through his nose, battling what he wanted. Danny stood, wavering. She stepped toward me, fingertips hovering at my cheek, so close the warmth tingled. But she withdrew, arms folding like wings caught mid-flight. "If we move," she whispered, eyes glossy, "there is no undo." The certainty in her voice was matched only by the hunger beneath it. Ben released a breath that sounded like surrender, yet nobody crossed the last inch of space. Not yet. A hush settled so complete the rain sounded distant, as if the loft itself feared to breathe. I rose without thinking and let one fingertip graze the piano lid. It was cool, slick, trembling with notes trapped inside, exactly like me. Across the fire glow, Ben mirrored the gesture, pressing his palm over the pulse beneath his shirt. His eyes found mine, bright with questions neither of us dared voice. Danny whispered my name. The single syllable slid down my spine like velvet heat. She crossed the rug, each deliberate step erasing years of restraint, until she stood beside me. Instead of touching, she raised her wrist, displaying the dried bead of wine, a tiny ruby of everything we were afraid to taste. "I'm tired of pretending this isn't ours," she breathed, laying her hand on middle C, right beside mine. Warmth seeped through lacquer, and the piano itself seemed to shiver, acknowledging our confession with one invisible chord. Behind us, Sam pushed his chair back. His voice, rough with longing, stitched the quiet. "I keep dreaming I open a door and the room is already on fire," he said. Tonight I stayed. He moved to my other side, and for a breath the three of us formed a fragile constellation around the silent keys. Ben lingered apart, fingers widening on the stem of an untouched glass until the distance roared like thunder. Then he set the crystal down with a deliberate click and crossed the rug to complete our circle. Now we were 4 points of light, breathing like chords unresolved. Ben's hand hovered a whisper above Danny's shoulder, trembling with a wish held too long. Her lashes lifted, in them lived every secret glance they had traded when they thought no one watched. My pulse hammered an answer. I edged my hand toward Sam's, stopping with a millimeter still untouched, like a held note clinging to silence before surrender. Ben spoke first, his voice frayed yet steady. If we move, none of us gets to retreat. No one disagreed. Wind pressed harder against the glass, and for one suspended heartbeat our bodies tipped the smallest degree. Gravity begged to finish the motion. The loft smelled of cedar, rain, and inevitability. We didn't close the gap. Instead, it folded around us, holding us, breathless, incandescent, alive on the verge of something we could not yet name, but burning beneath our skin. Lightning cracked so violently it rattled the window panes and plunged the loft into sudden darkness. The fireplace sputtered, then died, leaving only the blue glow of the city flashing in and out as more bolts clawed the sky. An emergency tone blared overhead, a shrill, metallic shriek that froze every breath. Security lockdown, an automated voice announced, echoing through unseen speakers. All exterior doors sealed until power stabilizes. For one stunned moment none of us moved. We were already standing impossibly close, bodies magnetized by everything we hadn't done. Now the building itself had closed its fists around us. I felt the air contract, thick as velvet, as if the loft were breathing with us, hungry, impatient. Ben reached for the wall panel, but the touch screen flickered uselessly. Dead, he muttered, fists clenching at his sides. The faint lightning flicker carved planes of longing and regret across his face. Danny's hand hovered inches from his, instinct contending with caution. She could steady him with a touch, but one touch might break them open for good. Then my phone buzzed on the coffee table, its screen lighting a small, trembling circle of truth. A single message banner glowed, "Are you safe?" From my sister, who never texted without a string of emojis. Tonight there were none, just stark concern, as if some premonition had reached her through the storm. Sam glimpsed the name, his jaw locking. I sensed the question behind his silence. What happens when the world outside finds out what we almost became? The shrieking alarm fell away, replaced by a pervasive hush. We were 4 silhouettes in the strobe of distant lightning, each heartbeat loud enough to hear. Danny brushed stray hair from her face. In the brief spark of light, I saw her eyes shining, equal parts fear and something wilder. She whispered, "Maybe this is the universe telling us." Her voice cracked before she could finish. "That we can't run anymore," Sam supplied, voice low, raw. He stepped behind me, his warmth a shield against the chill seeping from the walls. Not touching, yet I felt him everywhere. Ben turned, resolving some silent battle. He drew Danny's shaking fingers into his own. The contact was soft, almost polite, but electricity rippled out like a second storm. My pulse crashed so hard I thought the others might hear it. Another flash of white split the sky, and in its glare Sam's hand rose, hovering just above my waist, close enough that the fabric of my dress stirred. I wanted to lean back, let him steady me, but gravity itself seemed to hold us in suspense. The automated voice returned, announcing 10 more minutes of lockdown. 10 minutes that felt both merciful and cruel, time enough to cross every line, or to memorize the ache of staying still. Thunder rolled overhead, dragging a deep, resonant growl through the rafters. No one spoke. We stood bound by a silence louder than sirens, hearts rioting against ribs, trapped not by steel doors but by the terrifying knowledge that desire, once named, could never again be unfelt. Sunlight slipped through the blinds in pale ribbons, laying quiet stripes across the rug where 4 wineglasses still stood, half full and unbrave. Nobody had slept, yet dawn felt eerily gentle, as if the storm had wrung out every violent note and left only the hush that follows confession. The air still smelled of cedar, rain, and some new mineral hint of daring that clung to our skin, refusing to fade with morning. Ben sat on the edge of the sofa, elbows on knees, studying his wedding ring the way a sailor checks the horizon after drifting off course. Danny brewed coffee in the kitchen, each measured scoop an attempt at normal. The scent curled through the air, comfort turned strange because we all knew exactly what had not happened and, more dangerously, what almost had. Sam and I shared the window seat, shoulders touching, neither of us moved. City traffic began to mutter 8 floors below, making the night feel mythic, a tale we might doubt by lunch if not for the pulse still echoing in our wrists. "Lockdown's over," Ben said at last. "Doors reset at 3:30. He didn't add that none of us had tried to leave. Danny set 4 mugs on the table, then kept one clasped like an anchor. She looked at me, just looked, until my chest tightened with the memory of her whisper, "Tired of pretending this isn't ours." The words hung fragile and undefeated. A knock interrupted. One light rap, hesitant. We froze. My sister's voice drifted through the door, "Power's back. Thought you might need breakfast rescue." I pictured her holding croissants and innocent questions, unaware the world inside was balanced on the thinnest thread. Ben rose, but Danny touched his arm. "Let me," she said. The simple offer felt monumental, an admission that none of us could face the ordinary until we chose who we were going to be next. While she walked down the hallway, Sam spoke low. "Nothing broke last night," he said. "Something opened." I answered without turning, "Open isn't simple." From the entry I heard Danny greet my sister, tone bright yet new, an octave richer, carrying the echo of midnight vows never spoken. Footsteps approached, bearing pastries and the unknowing world. Our glances met, for lines in a knot, and I felt it, no peace yet, only a deeper truth, burning steady beyond guilt or fear, waiting to be named in daylight. Morning stretched into mid-afternoon before any of us found the courage to speak what night had carved into silence. I sat on the floor with my back to the couch, knees drawn close, tracing circles on the rim of an untouched mug. Across from me, Ben leaned forward, elbows on his thighs, eyes soft and reddened but clear. "We didn't cross the line," he said, voice low. "But we all felt what's living on the other side of it." His ring glinted. For the first time it looked less like a wall, more like a promise to tell the truth. Beside him, Danny curled her fingers around his sleeve, not claiming, only steadying. Her gaze shifted between the 3 of us, tender and a little afraid. "I don't want to lose what we already have," she whispered. "But I can't unknow last night. I don't want to." The loft hummed with soft city noise, delivery trucks and distant horns, a reminder that the world kept spinning while our private orbit rearranged itself. Sam, still at the window, spoke without turning. "Whatever happens next," he said, "let's choose it awake, not by accident." He faced me then, eyes bright with that same cautious flame he'd carried all night. "If we step forward, we do it together. No secrets. No half-truths." My throat tightened, but the words finally came. "I'm scared," I admitted. "Not of wanting you, of breaking the parts of us that are already beautiful." I felt Danny's hands slide into mine, warm, certain. Ben covered our joined hands with his own, Sam added his last, a quiet stack of pulses. For heartbeats thudded through our palms, ragged yet rhythmic, like a song finding its tempo. Ben exhaled. "Then let's give ourselves time. No rush. Just honesty." He lifted my hand, placed the lightest kiss on my knuckles, then did the same for Danny. Sam pressed his forehead to the back of my fingers, eyes closed, as if sealing a vow. We rose together and opened the balcony doors. Rain-washed sunlight spilled over us, cool and forgiving. In that easy hush, Ben rested his lips on my forehead, Danny leaned against Sam's shoulder. I laced fingers with both of them. Nothing else was decided, but everything felt chosen. The night would linger like perfume, sweet, impossible to forget, yet daylight held us, careful and warm, while our hearts learned the shape of a gentler, braver love.